Welcome to our very first episode of Discovering the Possible. I'm your host, Chris Nolte, and today we will be discussing the topic of incentives and how incentives here in the United States are different from incentives in the Philippines, and how you as a client in the United States can use US-based incentive structures to more closely tie the results and performance of your remote professional to their bonus structures in and around the holidays.
We are at the nexus of something greater. This is our story about building a remote-only company that spans the entire globe. This is the future of business, technology, and global remote work. You are watching Discovering the Possible.
So why would anyone want to do a podcast? The reason why we set out to do a podcast is we found that there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to thinking about working with remote professionals. It's certainly something that I've been on a journey with, because our company, Kayana, is remote first, which means that everyone on the team, including myself, is remote. This is not a journey that everyone gets to go on. It's certainly not a popular perspective today. So much of the news is about Jeff Bezos and others telling their employees that they all have to come back to the office. We've taken the exact opposite approach. And as a small business, I have found that this has made a huge difference in the way I think about the world, about our business, and about our people. So not every theory about managing a company or a business is as cookie cutter as it once was. Now you have to start thinking about what it means when you're not physically in person with someone, how that changes the way you approach business, the way you develop clients, and the type of services and support that you provide remotely. Many people think that being a remote first company is actually in some ways a negative. And what I'm hoping to do is to uncover and show you how a remote first company can be truly remarkable and actually, in a way, deliver above and beyond than businesses built in a physical space. So tune in to Discovering the Possible and see our journey as a remote first company as we build and help support other companies build their remote teams. As a longtime entrepreneur, the holidays was always a weird time for us as a company, because you wanted to celebrate and reward the people on your team with a financial bonus. But at the same time, you oftentimes didn't know the performance of the month until February or January or February, well into the next year. And so most companies actually paid two bonuses. They would pay a Christmas bonus or a holiday bonus, and then they would create a performance bonus or potentially a profit sharing bonus for the company. So in the Philippines, the bonus is paid all at once in December. And so this is why the question around whether or not we pay the 13th month or you pay the 13th month is important. So if in the US, a company might pay two bonuses, a Christmas bonus or a holiday bonus, and a performance bonus after the year's in the books, it actually operates quite differently in the Philippines in what is called the 13th month bonus. The 13th month bonus is quite literally paid in the 12th month, December, and it's equal to what would otherwise be another month of pay. So imagine doubling up December's pay, and that would be the 13th month plus the payment or the compensation for that month's work. The question is, should Filipino freelancers ask for the 13th month pay, and why you shouldn't still be happy with it? When I saw this, I was immediately thrown off because I don't agree with this statement at all. Now, this happens to be something that's been floating around social media in the Philippines, but the 13th month is culturally relevant in the Philippines. This conversation about the 13th month, I think, is absolutely critical, as any discussions about compensation are. I think so often people are concerned about talking about compensation, but if you demonstrate value, they will want to pay you the 13th month. But if you don't even mention it or ask for it, you will certainly not get it. So when I see this statement, I think it's patently wrong and really starts off the relationship on the wrong foot. You really should be laying all this out, not in a patronizing sort of way, but in a culturally sensitive way. Because quite frankly, the Philippine culture is built around the 13th month. And I think it's important for you to be able to, at the very least, ask for it. And I suspect get it. Hey, boss, are we working Christmas? Boss responds, no, we will probably be closed all next week. Any way to earn a Christmas bonus this week then? LOL. Yeah, rob a bank. So first of all, you have to ask yourself when you're working with a client, whether you're in a relationship or a transaction. I think oftentimes remote professionals want to think about selling time. And that's truthfully how it's marketed. I mean, people talk about how much they get paid per hour and so on and so forth. When you're working with an agency, you actually get time off, paid time off. And you might even have vacation days that you swap to and from, like, for example, Veterans Day. You might have decided that you're going to work Veterans Day, which would otherwise be a U.S. holiday, and actually take that day off instead, near and around Christmas. So you shouldn't have to ask a question like this because you probably have paid time off that would otherwise allow you to get paid during that time. And let's face it, a Christmas bonus really has nothing to do with working during the days around Christmas. It has to do with an appreciation for all the work you've done up until that point. So I think these are sort of like, this is like a strange dichotomy of questions around selling time and being appreciated for a year's worth of work that seems a little misguided, to say the least. Me watching other companies give out holiday bonuses. So this is Leonardo DiCaprio looking sad and wistfully towards someone else. And I think there's a book and a movie that really captures the life of someone that basically constantly reminded what they didn't have. Here's a message to all you folks that are working with clients today that aren't actually considering you for holiday bonuses. You're in the wrong gig. First of all, if you're working for any company within the Philippines, they have to legally give you a bonus. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But if you're somehow finding yourself in a role or a contractor relationship where the client's not valuing and not paying a bonus, that's a whole nother problem. All right, top signs your boss hates you. Your last Christmas bonus was a high five. Well, I mean, that's a little rough. It would be great if you got a little bit more than just a high five. I do think there's something about being and working at a great company and getting paid a great salary and being asked to do a great job and not necessarily getting rewarded any more than that. There's a lot of jobs where people are underpaid for the value they create. Unless you're a rock star or a professional artist and you're following your love and passion, it would be nice to get a bonus, and that would be kind of rough if you just got a high five. When I first started working for remote professionals, the issue of the 13th month came up because one of my remote professionals brought it up to me, and I had no idea what they were talking about. In fact, when I just did the quick math, it seemed like, well, their 1/12 of a year is about 8.5%. 8.5% bonus was not unknown to me. This seems reasonable. In and of itself, from an American context, it seemed, if nothing else, I think conservative. I think it could be much higher than that. But when I started digging in, I was really surprised to find that the 13th month is not just a thing, it's the law. And based on Filipino law, employers in the Philippines have to pay a 13th month, and they have to pay it before the 24th of December, which is, of course, the day before Christmas. So all the rank and file employees who work for at least 1 month are entitled to a 13th month pay. The computation is based, of course, on the prorated amount of time they worked in that company. The benefit is before the 24th, which gives you just enough time to go to the toy store and find out all the toys you're going to buy for your kid are gone. But if you don't do this as a company, you actually can get fined, and there could be legal consequences. So, I mean, this is real, which is amazing because societally, this means that everyone's getting a nice payout just for the holidays. And it's probably because they really value those holidays, not just because they want to drive the economy, but they really feel like it's important for families to have that effectively built in savings to spend at that time of the year. I found that the holiday season in the Philippines is quite a remarkable time. I think we can go and do an entire new segment on that. But it turns out that Christmas starts in September, not after Thanksgiving like it does here in the United States. So what does the 13th month law do for the country? It ensures that employees receive a year bonus at the end of the year, or year-long bonus. It removes, especially amongst people that are employed in the Philippines, it removes all the weirdness that happens out of people's employment arrangements with their employer at this time of the year. So it virtually guarantees them a bonus, which they can effectively count on and rely upon when they're planning for the holidays in December. So that's why the 13th month is so important. And that's why it's a thing, even if you're employing people remotely, because it's part of their culture. It's embedded in how they operate and how they plan. And that's why it's important for you as a prospective client of a remote professional to be thinking about these sort of things. So the 13th month is tied to the holidays in December, but we're not really just talking about any holidays. We're talking about Christmas. And the backstory here is that about 80% of the Philippines is Christian. In fact, they're not just Christian, they're Catholic, Roman Catholic. Most of the country is celebrating Christmas. And so there's this massive buildup within the country in anticipation of that holiday season. Now, for those of you who are wondering, what's the next largest group, religious group in the country? It's Muslim. It's about 6%. So it's disproportionately by number, obviously Christian and specifically Catholic. But there is a population of Muslim there. And they don't have Christmas. I'm sure they appreciate the bonus as well. So why would anyone want to create incentives or bonuses for the people on their team? I think this is sort of a almost painfully obvious answer, but I've seen people mishandle it too. When you're working especially closely with remote professionals, tying their performance does two things. One is it brings them closer to you and really does more than just say kind words about their work and their contributions to the company. You're literally able to affect their lives and to help them benefit in ways that are almost hard to imagine here in the United States because of how much further a dollar goes. But it's also a very real way to touch the family of someone in the Philippines. Filipino families are very closely knit. And so when you're bonusing a remote professional that's working on your team, you might be supporting more than just their particular hobby or their interest in travel. You might be supporting their extended family too. And so this is an amazing way to give back. It's an amazing way to communicate your appreciation. And it's really an important way to let your remote professional know that you care. Now, the truth is that these sorts of things are applicable anywhere in the world. I've seen people mismanage incentives within a company woefully, and it ultimately catches up. I mean, initially, employment and responsibility are all early on part of the goodwill of a business relationship. But ultimately, if there are no just desserts for hard work and productivity, you feel like you're being taken advantage of or not appreciated. And any business owner has experienced this situation where they didn't give the person a raise fast enough or directly tie the incentives of a person to their performance or even fast enough or communicate it well enough up front. And that's why this is our first episode, because we really do believe as a company that aligning incentives with performance and using this tool as a way to demonstrate appreciation and support is really, really important. So if bonuses are important or incentives are important, there's different ways to talk about these things. I think it's helpful to map the US based bonus structure against the Filipino based bonus structure to understand the differences on how we pay bonuses as a culture in the US and how people pay them in the Philippines, and compare and contrast amounts, etc. So the easiest one in the United States is to think of as the holiday bonus. That's a bonus that's paid to an employee to celebrate the holidays with them and to support the spend that goes on during the month of December, typically. In the Philippines, that's the 13th month bonus. That's a portion of the 13th month bonus. So right now, we're 3 to 5% in the US against, call it 8.5% in the Philippines. Then there's the discretionary bonus. So a discretionary bonus doesn't exist in the Philippines because it's pre-programmed to be in the 13th month. So that's whatever the holiday bonus isn't in the 13th month is the discretionary bonus. In the United States, it's typically not paid out during the holiday season, or it could be if you're an investment banker, but many times it's paid into the next year after the books are closed on the business. And this tends to be decided based on how much money or how many KPIs were hit the year prior, and is paid out in, call it, January or February. Now, the reason why it's paid out in January and February and not January 1 or December 26th or something is that this is also used as a way to retain talent and create continuity between the previous year and the new year. And so this is also masquerading as a retention bonus. In the Philippines, there really isn't a retention bonus. You get paid a bonus in December. And what's interesting in the contractor world is it's very oftentimes hard to find high quality remote professionals in the month of December because everyone's waiting around to get paid the bonus. Once they're paid the bonus, they're free to go. That retention is over. In the United States, by breaking up the holiday bonus from the discretionary and or retention bonus, you basically get this continuity across the season and across the new year. Now, finally, there's the annual bonus. And the annual bonus is people that tend to take bonuses a little less sophisticated about how bonuses are paid. And in this regard, the 13th month and the annual bonus typically come in December. So it's the same as it is in the Philippines as the United States. But the US based owner, operator, or manager is really looking at this in a much more simplistic way. It's all coming out in December. There's no retention. There's probably no incentives per se built into it, although that could be different depending on what company you're working for. So there might be incentives built into the annual bonus, probably paid in December. But at the end of that bonus, you are free to go. And it's a new year all over again as the new budgets and the new KPIs come out. Now, there is another way of paying discretionary incentive bonuses that can also align very nicely when working with contractors abroad. And that's by paying incentives along the way, much like a lead development or business development person might get paid when they sign a new account. That's something you can do with a remote professional as the year goes on to continuously demonstrate your appreciation for your remote professional. I recommend that. I think that's a really good way of demonstrating your appreciation. And also, again, thinking back to my comments earlier, this is a way for you to also touch the remote professional and their extended families through that payment. At Kayana, we particularly like these discretionary bonuses that are coming out throughout the year, in part because we like to join in the success of the remote professional as they get paid these amounts. We typically facilitate those payments by first paying the remote professional and by the clients paying us basically a pass through of that amount. But it's a great way for us to see how much our clients are appreciating the remote professionals, and maybe even once in a while sharing some of that data with the remote professional community so they can know what to strive for. So the way this is structured is that these are sort of the gross numbers, but then when you start talking about service businesses, they go up pretty dramatically. So this is in the United States. This is what you might expect on a broad basis. But when you start talking about employees of companies in other fields, that's where it changes. You're probably wondering yourself, like, Chris, this is great. We're talking about incentives and bonuses. Awesome. What are we really talking about here? And I think the way to explain that to you is, I think, first look at what we do here in the United States in general by industry, and then to think about what that might mean for someone within your industry within the United States, and then think about what it could be for a remote professional, obviously working for you, but outside the United States. So what you should know is that on average, a employer in the United States pays an employee about 9.6% of the employee's salary as a bonus. It's usually separated or thought of in two different lumps. One as sort of the holiday bonus, which I get mentioned is about 3 to 5%. And the other portion of that is thought of as incentives and or retention bonus, which makes up the difference. So on average, across all industries in the United States, an employer gives an employee 9.6% of their salary in the form of bonus. So when I think about incentive-based pay, working with remote professionals, I think immediately of how we do it in the United States, because the overall levels are different, but I'm not sure the percentages should be. And so you can go industry by industry and really evaluate those different incentives and decide for yourself what makes the most sense. And so typically what we imagine for our own clients is, if the 13th month is, call it 8.5%, if the person's doing technical work based on US based bonus structures, I can imagine something between, call it 8.5% and 15% of their bonus being paid to them in December, or spread over the year, so that at the end of the year, it adds up to about 8.5% to 15%. If you're talking about retail and consumer goods, which is not typically something that remote professionals could do well remotely, although they can play any number of roles in the administrative and back of house or marketing or accounting parts of this, it's probably, again, somewhere between 8.5% and maybe 20%. Now, the corollary here might be, if you're thinking about retail and or consumer facing businesses, you could be thinking about sales development roles or business development roles, where people are much more closely aligned to the sales they actually generate. And it's much more, just like retail and commissions, it's much more connected. In financial services, again, where this is basically a white collar role, bonuses can be 15 to 20%. I don't think this is out of the range of the possible for a remote professional as well. Again, that's almost 2.5x what the 13th month represents in Filipino culture. And then finally, if you're in IT and doing technical work in information technology, you're in bonus based on a startup or a product rollout of a technical product. I mean, it can be much higher than that. I mean, obviously it depends on where you're playing within the company, but incentives can be up to as high as 28%. Now, in the United States, when you're in IT, you might be getting shares, you might be getting stock options. There's a lot of different things that could be happening with your compensation. So I'm not sure you're going to have full access to this as a remote professional, but it's not 8.5%, most likely. So when we start thinking about a Filipino-based bonus structure, while you're mandated to get 8.5%, which is 1/12 of a year's compensation that you were paid along the year, I think there's a lot of different ways you can take what we just saw in the American-based incentive structures to motivate and connect the activities of the person over the year or at the end of the year to their contributions to. It's a really interesting activity to consider these different methods. I think we're very fortunate to live in the United States, where survivor bonuses aren't really the thing. It's based upon our production. I also think that in the United States, we tend to get lazy about incentives, and we pay people incentives when maybe we shouldn't, truthfully. Incentive-based bonus plans, properly executed, should go anywhere between 0 and maybe as high as 25%, as you saw in the IT structure. I think and this is how we would suggest to our clients to think about it, and how we foster these incentives and incentive programs with them, because we ultimately believe that championing discretionary bonus is the way forward. All that being said, that if our clients are not thinking highly enough about their remote professionals, so that they're not even thinking about hitting 8.5%, then we start to get nervous because something else is broken. Either the client isn't the right client, or the remote professional is so underperforming that they should not be in the role that they're in. So, I mean, how can you spend 80% less on the overhead of a person who's totally killing it for you, maybe even doing 100% more productivity because they're working third shift and very dedicated to your effort, and not feel generous or grateful enough to pay them more than what any American would otherwise anticipate, albeit on a much higher salary. So that's where the industry of remote professionals and remote professional agencies needs to get a little brave, and they shouldn't simply walk away with the 13th month bonus structure. I think that sets the wrong example for what's possible, and quite frankly, pigeonholes remote professionals as forever assistants and not someone that is driving value to the business. So I've been a part of a lot of different companies over the years. One thing I can tell you is I've never run a nonprofit. I've been on the board of nonprofits, but what I've experienced working with our nonprofit clients is that they are more than willing to bonus their remote professionals precisely because of what we just discussed. And I think that's a really unique perspective, because no one wants to take money from the mission, but everyone in the non-for-profit space understands the importance of their people to the mission and driving value to the mission. And so in the nonprofit space, executives and their teams can also value and benefit from incentive structures, including the remote professionals. I recently had an experience with one of our clients where the board wasn't of the mind that the remote professional should get a bonus, or at least not in the same amount. And what's amazing is that the executive director who was employing this person decided to pay for it out of their own pocket, which absolutely blew me away. Made me think that maybe I should write a letter to the board demonstrating how valuable this executive director was to be thinking about their people more than they were thinking about themselves. That's the nature of people in nonprofit, and it's something that I love being a part of and supporting missions of various nonprofit businesses and organizations. But it's really, I think it says quite a lot about nonprofits and where they put value and establish value. As a remote first company, we use incentives in a way compensate for the fact that we are remote, so that we can demonstrate in person or physically our appreciation for the person, even if they're 6,000 or 7,000 miles away. I think what gets really interesting is how people determine those numbers and what the bonuses actually mean to the people that are living in different cultures with different expectations about what those bonuses could and should be. And I think as remote professionals become an increasingly large part of the American economy, a client of a remote professional would be well advised to use our incentive-based structure in place of other countries' incentive-based structures, because I think we more closely align the payouts with the value created. Thank you for watching today's episode of Discovering the Possible. I'm Chris Nolte, your host, and please join us next time and continue to follow our journey as a remote first company building remote professional teams for our clients. Stay tuned.